Good morning, everyone. Now we'll see the next topic of XML, that is document type definition, DTD. Okay, in short form, we call it as DTD, document type definition, which means a schema which will be describing the structure and content of the XML. As we have seen, we can have a several XML documents, okay, where we are declaring our root elements and the nested elements within that. So we can create such kind of elements in a such kind of XML documents as many as we want, okay, to keep it concise, to keep its content usable and differ from each other document. We need to follow some structure, okay. So here we have a document type definition which will be serving as a set of rules that will be defining how the element should be defined, what are the attributes and what are their relationships with the XML document. That has to be in a specific structure and validate their integrity, okay. So here are the key aspects of DTDs, like what is the purpose of the DTD. So to here the purpose, we have DTDs will be providing us with the specifying that how the elements, what are its attributes, what are the elements that are allowed here in the document, what are the attributes that are there with the elements, and what is their hierarchical structure. Those are all defined in a specified structure, okay. They will be ensuring, DTD's purpose is to ensure that XML documents adhere to the predefined structure, making it easier to validate and process that XML data consistently. And here we go, the syntax, as we have already seen, DTD are typically defined using a specialized syntax, that is this one, doc type, okay. So doc type, what is the root element, that is root element has to be defined, okay. And the value, and where, see here, DTD doc type will be declaration which will be specifying what is the root element of the document and references to the DTD file. So where did you mention the structure of that element, structure of the XML document, that means what elements it will be consisting and what type of data type it will be taking. So these are all the user has to define, when he is the developer has to define it, okay. So these all will be contained in a DTD file, okay. So which will be referring in the other DTD file. It could be in a internal or an external DTD. Like internal mean, within the XML document we are directly mentioning, like how we have an internal CSS and external CSS, or so in the same way internal DTD means within the XML document only we are giving the definitions of those elements and their attributes, okay. So what could be their data types and all we are defining there. And external DTD is that a separate document where you are separately referencing the XML document and mentioning in that document what values, what root element, what are the other nested elements within that root element, what values it will be taking. All those definitions will be defined in that file, DTD file, okay. Defining elements and attributes, like when we have in a DTD, you need to specify the elements that are allowed within the document and their hierarchical structure, and you can also define what kind of attributes that each element will be having with their data types. As said, here is an example. If you see elements and attributes in the external DTD, so in the, this is a separate DTD file which should be referenced wherever you are in your XML file, okay. So here is the DTD, separate DTD XML file. If you see the element, it starts with less than symbol with exclamation mark, element, root element, and how many child elements it will be having. Element, child element, what kind of parsing data it is consisting of. Element, child element 2, what kind of data it will be consisting of. Attribute lists of a list of child element 1, you need to specify the attribute data. See here, element content models, if there we have seen mentioned it as PC data, which means parsed character data. parsed character data. So the common models here, how what are allowed, what are not allowed, which are that has to be mentioned, no. So DTD will be allowing you to specify this allowable content models for elements. So that is PC data means parsed character data. Empty means that is that element has no content. Sequence of elements if it is consisting, though, that is element 1, element 2, or choices between the elements, that is element 1 or element 2. So and attributes, how are we defining? Attributes list has to be associated, and specifying what is the attribute name, what kind of data type it is taking, what are the default values, and many more. Like here is an example of defining an attribute in our DTD file, that is attribute list, element name, for which our attributes are being given. What is the attribute ID? If I say ID, what kind of value it will be taking, data type it will be taking, whether it is numerical, okay, or character, okay. So that here we need to mention. And entity declarations, so when we are defining an entity, DTD can define entities. Here we have to use it for declaring reusable content, such as text content or elements or character data. We need to define it. Entities, when you are using, we are used for defining macros, which will be, macro means macros are usage of a small pieces of the content. Okay, here is an example of it, that is entity. What is that entity name? Here you have to give, and the content what it carries, okay. And validation, DTD can be used for document validation, which will be adhering to the specified rules. As we know, DTD, if a specialized that structure it has to follow, and XML parsers can validate documents against a reference to DTD when you are reference to DTD from when you are using external DTD file, okay. DTD to detect structural and content errors, if it will be going to that. See, in our XML file, we have used root elements, library, and all. And in the DTD file, we have mentioned what is this library root element consists of, what are its attribute values, all those that are being mentioned in the DTD. So, XML parser, what it will do, it go to the DTD, it references to the DTD file. No, within the XML file, we can mention it will be going and checking the structure and the content, if at all, if there are any content errors. Okay, the limitations of DTD is that it will be supporting only a limited kind of data types and limited support for defining complex content models, and there is a lack of support for certain advanced features with the XML. Okay, alternatives what we have for XML other than XML, that is XSD, XML schema definition. Okay, that is an alternative schema language for XML, which will be offering much more features and flexibility than DTDs. Okay, XSDs have largely replaced these DTDs in this modern XML applications. Okay, and namespaces in XML. Namespaces are mechanisms which will be allowing you to avoid naming conflicts. Like if at all, if we are making use of library and library, as I told you, a B capital book and all small letters book will be treated to be as in different elements, right? So whenever in the, if we are, when we are making use of many number of XML files, if the elements are going on repeating, and in different XML files, and their implementation or the execution or their meaning is different in each and every XML file. So those has to be properly defined, that is naming convictions, naming conflicts, that has to be avoided. Okay, so for that sake we are talking about namespaces. See, they will be enabling. See, when, that allows you to avoid naming conflicts when elements from different XML vocabularies or sources are combined in a single document. They will be enabling you to uniquely define, identify elements and attributes by associating them with a specific namespace or set of definitions. So whenever we are integrating XML documents, we need to ensure that it will be, these schemas, documents are properly defined and they are having a single context. Okay, So namespaces, why do we need namespaces? See, XML documents will be containing elements and attributes with the same names, but they can represent entirely different concepts, right? Okay, here my library element might be conveying something, and in the other XML document, library means something else. Okay, so it might be consisting differently, different content concept. Okay, so to prevent this naming conflicts, by providing a way to distinguish between elements and attributes with the same name but defined in different context. Okay, to differentiate them we have to follow this namespace declarations. How we are doing is, your namespaces for elements and attributes in an XML document, we have to make use of XML attribute. Okay, if you see here, that see this attribute is used declared in the root element of the document. So root element, and from where which XML document you are referring to. If I am taking library, okay, so here we have this, in this way we have to declare it, library from which XML namespace, that is prefix, that file, that namespace has to be given. Okay, we use some prefix to it and that element, and give the content for it. Okay, in this way we can define it and use the same name, but context could be differently, okay, referring to a different XML. Namespace prefixes, often we use prefix. Why we are using prefix? If you see here, library might be my root element, and I'm using some prefix to that from where I am taking that library element. Okay, prefix could be optional element. Okay, and optional, to provide a shorthand way. Okay, when we are using prefix, that will be, instead of always calling the whole element, you can use a prefix to that, that is shorthand way to reference to the full namespace. Instead of that full URI, where our XML document you are trying to reference, you can give a prefix to that, and prefix will be telling that, referring to that file, that element. Okay, so in that way we are making use of a shorthand way. And prefixes are, I told you, it's not mandatory, they are optional, but they make XML documents more readable and concise. Okay, URI, if we talk about URI, uniform resource identifier, it is associated with a namespace which will be serving us as a unique identifier for that namespace. Okay, well, the URI doesn't have to be working URL, but it's often URI, that is unique in the organization or schema being defined. And namespace scope, when it comes to scope, when you are declaring, when the namespace declaration, it will be applying to that element and its descendants, that is nested elements, unless overridden with any nested element, this, the scope of that element will be up to there. And default namespace is, see, default namespace without, if at all if you are using without any prefix, that namespace will be applied to all unprefixed elements and attributes within the scope. That means whatever name, if the library is repeating without any prefix, then the scope of the library element will be in the same, will be continued. Okay, and here, namespace separation. So elements and attributes with different namespaces are considered distinct, right? With different documents. Those are two different documents, and two different library elements are different in context. Even if their local names are the same, the separation is based on the URI, we know. And namespace validation. How are we validating? The parsers, XML parsers will be validating that elements and attributes in a document using according to the declared namespaces. Okay, URIN. Parsers will be checking the elements and attributes with the specific namespace that has been given existing. Okay, and complies, refers to that namespace definitions. And common use cases are, like, you can commonly used in XML schemas, SOAP web services, XHTML documents, and in various XML based data interchanged formats such as SVG and RSS. Thank you all. Keep learning.